The storm raged outside, its ferocity mirroring the tumult in Sarah's heart. Lightning illuminated her modest living room, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. Jake, her loyal golden retriever, was tucked beside her, a steady source of comfort amidst the chaos. His warm, fluffy body radiated a calm that Sarah desperately needed. She ran her fingers through his fur, attempting to placate her own rising anxiety. "Why does it always happen when I'm least prepared?" Sarah muttered, glancing at the door. The recent news had set her on edge. A distant cousin was coming to visit, a figure from her childhood shrouded in confusion and memories that she tried to suppress. They hadn't seen each other in years, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this reunion might unravel old wounds rather than healing them. Sarah felt the restlessness pulse within her, much like the storm outside. She had built a sanctuary in her home, a haven where she and Jake thrived together, relishing quiet evenings filled with laughter and comfort. Suddenly, that peace was on the brink of being shattered. The thought ignited a flicker of rebellion inside her. "Okay, Jake," she said, looking at him with wild determination in her eyes. "We're not going to let anyone ruin our little corner of happiness." He responded with a reassuring wag of his tail as if he understood every word. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, slicing through her thoughts. Her heart raced, clambering in, her chest like a bird trying to escape its cage. "It's time," she breathed, panic edging her voice. Jake sat up, alert, his soft ears perked and ready to greet the intruder or defend his territory if needed. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door only to be met by an explosion of energy. Mark, her cousin, burst through with a wide smile and an infectious laugh that reverberated through the damp air. "Sarah, it's been too long." He enveloped her in a bear hug, overpowering her senses with his exuberance as he released her. Sarah felt a battle brewing inside here, a fierce part wanting to embrace the family connection and another, more primal instinct seeking shelter from the overwhelming aura Mark brought with him. Jake positioned himself between them, barking softly, sensing the unease crackling in the air. "Hey there, buddy," Mark exclaimed, kneeling to pet Jake, who sniffed his hands cautiously. "You've grown. Look at you." Sarah observed the two, aware that Jake's every action spoke volumes. His tail remained wagging, but his body was tense, visualizing his role as protector over her. "Mark, it's good to see you." "After all this time," she managed, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Let's catch up. I've got so many great stories to tell." Mark clapped his hands together, energized by the prospect of rekindling family ties. Sarah felt a sinking sensation within her as he began recounting tales from their childhood, yet she continued to nod politely, despite his lively demeanor. Something about Mark felt intrusive, almost suffocating in its exuberance. She noticed how he effortlessly commandeered the conversation while she stood on the sidelines, caught in an emotional haze. Jake, aware of her discomfort, leaned against her leg, grounding her in the moment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows deepened, and Mark seemed to invade every corner of her carefully curated space. Televisions blared, music blared, and the silence Sarah cherished was evaporating into an energetic whirlwind. Mark was enthusiastic, but his laughter echoed like a series of thunderclaps, drowning out the gentle rhythms of her life with Jake. "Nonsense." Mark dismissed, chuckling. "You need adventure, Sarah. How about a weekend trip to the mountains? Just you, me, and the great outdoors?" The thought sent a shiver down her spine. "It sounds fun," she replied cautiously, her stomach nodding. The last thing she wanted was to lose her quiet moments with Jake, to trade peaceful laps of togetherness for chaotic excursions into the unknown. Just think of it. Fresh air, hiking, and of course Jake can join us. He continued to push, feeding off his own excitement, but she could feel her resistance growing stronger. "No, Mark," she finally said, her tone more forceful. "I need this time for myself and Jake." He looked taken aback, surprised by the sudden edge in her voice. It was as if he couldn't comprehend why his idea of a fun weekend could be met with such fervent opposition. "Why not? You can't just sit around forever, Sarah. Life is happening and you're missing it." Inside her, emotions bubbled and boiled, threatening to overflow. Was this how it was going to be? She glanced down at Jake, who sat calmly beside her, a steadfast anchor amid the rising storm between them. "Because I love this life, Mark. I cherish these moments with him, she replied, gesturing to Jake, her voice rising slightly. Mark's expression shifted and she steeled herself, waiting for his response as the tension in the air thickened. Are you really going to let a dog dictate your life? He challenged. The words cut deeper than she anticipated. Anger ignited within her. Jake was more than a dog. He was her friend, her confident one who listened without judgment, who brought her joy in a chaotic world. That's not fair. She shot back, her voice trembling slightly. He means everything to me. You can't just waltz in and expect me to change my whole routine. Mark stepped back, disbelief flashing across his face, while Jake instinctively took a protective stance before her, growling softly, a low rumble that conveyed both loyalty and warning. All right, I get it, Mark admitted slowly, raising his hands in mock surrender, but you can't shut me out forever. Family is supposed to stick together. Through that moment of confrontation, something shifted in the air. The dance of emotions hung heavily between them, unresolved and raw. In that heartbeat of silence, Sarah gazed at Jake, breathing in the grounded presence of her four-legged guardian. She felt a flicker of iron in her resolve, a protective instinct that had often been overshadowed by guilt. Maybe family is about understanding each other's boundaries too, she replied, the defensive edge still present but tempered with a newfound clarity. Mark opened his mouth to respond, but Jake let out a small, sharp bark, directing his attention back to Sarah in that interaction as night fell and shadows deepened. Sarah realized she would not let her peace be compromised anymore. Together, she and Jake had built a life around trust, love, and understanding, much like the friendship she determined to foster. But only on her own terms. The clash that evening changed something fundamental in her. She would protect her bond with Jake at all costs, knowing that some battles might arise, but finding strength in vulnerability. Their relationship was not just a comfort. It was her sanctuary, and she would defend it fiercely, with the storm subsiding. Outside, Sarah quietly resolved to reclaim her space, her peace, and her time with Jake, no matter who or what attempted to intrude. The tension builds, the days that followed fell into a disconcerting rhythm. Mark had not taken Sarah's boundaries to heart. He remained a persistent force, determined to embed himself into her life like a stubborn weed in a carefully cultivated garden. Each time she stepped outside, he seemed to materialize from the shadows, eager to reconnect, as he put it, relentlessly pushing her out of her comfort zone. Let's take Jake to that new dog park, he suggested one afternoon, practically bouncing on his toes with excitement. It'll be great for him. Mark, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I'm really not in the mood for distractions right now, Sarah replied, her tone tinged with frustration. She could feel Jake's presence beside her, his soft golden fur brushing against her leg. His loyalty was an unspoken pact between them, a safe haven amidst the storm brewing with Mark. Come on, Sarah. You can't keep avoiding fun forever, Mark countered. His voice held an edge that made her uneasy. It was an undercurrent of impatience mingled with genuine concern, and she knew he meant well, but still felt cornered. Jake let out a low growl, a warning sign signaling his discomfort. With his head lowered and ears flat against his skull, he seemed to echo Sarah's hidden thoughts. She smiled at him, grateful for his unwavering support. You see? She said, motioning towards Jake. He also needs peace. Mark's brow furrowed. The irritation flickering in his eyes betrayed his confusion. I'm just trying to help you live a little. You're stuck in your routine, Sarah. It's about time you broke free. I don't need to be freed, Sarah responded, her patience wearing thin. What I need is for you to understand that this life with Jake is precious to me. It's enough. Mark opened his mouth to respond, but she felt a sense of finality seep into the air. This was not a pleasant one, but one she needed to draw firmly. The irony wasn't lost on her. In his quest to help, he had become the very force that kept her from feeling free in the first place. Days turned into weeks, and the tension between them grew like a churning storm, unpredictable and messy. Mark's attempts at lighthearted fun clashed with Sarah's desires for calm, invariably unraveling the little peace she had worked to maintain. One quiet Saturday morning, Sarah awoke to the unmistakable sound of barking echoing through her home. Jake was on alert, his body tense as he peered toward the window. She reluctantly pulled herself out of bed, her heart sinking when she saw Mark standing at her gate, waving enthusiastically. "Jake," he called, his voice exuberant. "Come. Here, buddy." As she opened the door, an involuntary sigh escaped her lips. Mark's presence felt like a weight settling over her, stifling her, and Jake was so excited it was as if a switch had flipped. He dashed out the door, tripping over himself and his eagerness to reach Mark, who crouched down to embrace him. Sarah felt the familiar prick of frustration. "What are you doing here, Mark?" "I thought we agreed I needed some space," she said, as she stepped outside, bringing an arm across her chest as if to shield herself from the situation. "Oh, come on, Sarah. It's a beautiful day," Mark replied, unfazed by her irritation. "I just thought we could take Jake on a little adventure at the lake. You know he loves the water." "Mark, she started, but the pleading glance from Jake melted her resolve. He bounded back to her, tail wagging furiously, looking between her and Mark as though trying to mediate the energy shifting in the air. "Just this once?" Mark pressed, his enthusiasm infectious even amidst her frustration. For a moment, Sarah wavered, her heart torn between wanting to protect her sanctuary and not wanting to disappoint Jake. "Really?" she asked, her voice softer now. "Let's just go for a couple of hours," Mark assured her. "I promise it'll be fun. Plus, it'll be good for him to socialize with other dogs." Ultimately, against her better judgment, she found herself agreeing, "Fine, just this once, but we're setting boundaries." "Absolutely," Mark exclaimed, his enthusiasm igniting like wildfire. As they drove towards the lake, Sarah felt a swirling cocktail of emotions, anxiety mixed with reluctant excitement. Jake sat in the back seat, his head sticking out of the window, tongue flapping wildly in the wind, embodying the spirit of freedom that Sarah was beginning to remember. They arrived at the lake, where the sky stretched a brilliant blue above them, almost mocking her internal storm. The vibrant hues reflected off the water's surface, causing Jake to bark in excitement. Sarah took a deep breath, hoping the beauty of the day would help temper the mounting tension between herself and Mark as they approached the shoreline. Mark seized the moment. "Look at him go," he shouted, watching as Jake raced toward the water, splashing around joyfully. "This is what he lives for." She couldn't help but crack a smile. Watching Jake dart through the water was a sight to behold, a moment of pure happiness captured in the sun's rays. But pride quickly morphed into anxiety as Mark peppered her with questions about their childhood memories, all while keeping a keen eye on Jake. Whenever her laughter felt genuine, it was tinged with the undercurrent of unresolved specter of unresolved feelings looming over her like a storm cloud. As Jake basked in the sun, chasing after ripples and sticks, Sarah found herself struggling against the roller coaster of emotions. Mark tilled up memories of summers spent together, sun-drenched and free, but it felt misaligned with what she was currently experiencing. With each story, she felt exposed, unsettled. "Remember the time we tried to build that treehouse?" Mark laughed, a heartfelt moment dripping from his words. "We ended up with more broken planks than anything else." As laughter echoed in her ears, she felt a sinking sense of disconnection. Their childhood adventures had seemed so innocent. Yet now there were layers of complexity woven into their family ties, layers marked by time and emotional distance. There were things left unsaid, and the reality that they were now adults, navigating different experiences and feelings, loomed heavily between them. "Yeah," she replied absent-mindedly, watching Jake splash about. "But that was a lifetime ago." As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the colors around them shifted from vibrant to muted, deepening the mood. Mark's laughter began to fade into the background noise of their surroundings, but relentless optimism pushed him onward. "Let's take one more picture with Jake. This is a day we can't forget." Reluctantly, Sarah acquiesced. With a forced smile, she posed with Mark as he balanced Jake in his arms, enthusiasm radiating between them. Just as they clicked the photo, Jake wriggled free, splashing Sarah with unexpected water. The chill forced a genuine laugh from her, unexpected and warm. "See?" Mark said, feeling victorious. "This is what it's all about. You needed this, didn't you?" Yet, just as Sarah felt a hint of camaraderie warming the atmosphere, sharp anxiety buzzed beneath the surface. It felt too forced, too contrived, like a facade hiding deeper currents that neither of them dared to acknowledge. Hours slipped away too quickly, and as they made their way back, the scenery began to dim. Shadows lengthened and the sun dipped below the horizon, wrapping them in a blanket of dusk. Mark's chatter filled the silence as he effortlessly filled the air with anecdotes, but Sarah felt increasingly constricted, as though walls were closing in around her. "Can we take a quiet moment?" she finally said, halting in her tracks. The aura of the day had shifted a transition that weighed heavy on her heart. Mark looked surprised, his expression shifting from exuberance to concern. "Sarah, I thought we were having fun." "I'm just saying I need a minute," she replied, taking a deep breath. Dawn's light had covered their prior tensions, but now her reality was settling again, darker and heavier. "I just want you to be happy," he said softly. His bravado fading slightly, Sarah felt a rush of warmth towards him, but it was coated with apprehension. What did that happiness mean when pushed against the boundary she so desperately needed? "It's not that simple, Mark," she responded, her voice barely above a whisper, just as the air grew thick with unspoken truths. Jake barked playfully, darting after a wayward stick tossed his way. The moment shattered the tension as Sarah watched him embrace that pure spirit once again. "Come on, let's go home," she said, making her decision clear. "Jake needs to rest, and so do I." With one last fond look at the lake, she turned her back on the vibrant chaos of the day. Grateful that amidst the noise and the push and pull of relationships, her truest loyalty remained grounded beside her. As they walked towards the car, Sarah made a silent vow. The essence of her bond with Jake would not shatter, it would only grow stronger against the tides of tension surrounding them. And with that, she resolved to navigate the storm that was Mark. Determined to safeguard the sanctuary she and Jake had built together. The adventure might be muddy, but the path was theirs, and it was a journey worth every struggle. The rising tension as days turned into weeks, Sarah felt the weight of her decision gradually evolving into a quiet storm. Mark's relentless presence had shifted from a minor nuisance to an omnipresent force in her life, like an unwanted guest who overstayed their welcome. Each day, he seemed determined to carve out a space in her heart that had primarily belonged to Jake. It was Saturday morning when the tension reached a new peak. Sarah and Jake lounged on the couch, the remnants of last night's police procedural flickering on the television screen now quietly buzzing in the background. Jake lay sprawled beside her, his soft breath soothing her troubled mind, but she could hardly concentrate. The doorbell rang, cutting through the calm. Sarah's heart sank as she exchanged a glance with Jake, who lifted his head, ears perked and alert. "Not again," she murmured. Before she could gather herself, Jake bolted off the couch, racing to answer the door, a determined guardian in a golden coat. "Good morning, Sarah." Mark's voice boomed with an irritating cheerfulness that grated on her nerves. He bounded into the living room, bright and relentless as ever. "I've got a great idea for today," she sighed internally, knowing her peaceful morning had just been hijacked. "What is it this time?" she asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. "We should take Jake to that dog-friendly festival downtown. There's going to be games, food stalls, and a best in show contest. This is the perfect chance for him to shine," Mark announced, his passion contagious but unwelcome. "Mark, I really don't know if that's a good idea," she began, defensive instinct kicking in. "Just think about it. People will be there, and Jake would love the attention. It'll be fun, I promise." His enthusiasm was like a stormy wind, whipping around her with a fervor that made it hard to resist, but resist she must. "I appreciate your energy, but Jake and I need quieter days. There's so much going on already." Each word felt like a battle, a push against Mark's relentless optimism. "Come on, Sarah. Stop shutting me out. It's a festival. Bright lights, happy people. When was the last time you did something adventurous?" He was practically bouncing on his toes, eyes gleaming with excitement. The desperate urge to push him away bubbled beneath Sarah's skin. "This is my idea of adventure, Mark. Peace and quiet with my dog, not flashy crowds and chaos." Mark's smile faded slightly, and for a moment she could see the frustration boiling beneath his bravado. "It's not chaos if you don't want it to be," he countered, his voice sharper than before. "You can't keep hiding away forever. You need to live beyond these walls." The tension in the room crackled like static electricity before a storm. Jake, sensing the unease, whimpered softly, darting to Sarah's side. She knelt down to calm him, grateful for his silent understanding. "See? Even he prefers the quiet," she said, wishing for her voice to carry strength, but Mark's demeanor shifted. "Maybe he's just as stuck as you are," he snapped. crossing his arms over his chest. Ever think about that? Sarah's breath hitched in her throat, shocked by his words. How dare you? She hissed, her voice low but fierce. The confrontation hung heavily in the air, unbearable and tense. Mark's initial enthusiasm had transformed into something darker, and she felt the familiar urge to retreat. This isn't just about you. It's about both of us trying to find a way to live, he continued, his tone rising again. Why can't you let go for once? Let Jake enjoy himself without your constant worry. Because I care, Mark. I'm doing what's best for us. She shot back, her bubbling under the surface. Jake let out a low growl, his golden fur bristling as he stepped forward, protective of Sarah. Jake! She chided softly, but she felt a rush of gratitude wash over her. He understood her turmoil, in ways even Mark couldn't fathom. Fine, you know what? If you're going to hide away in your safe little bubble with your dog, then that's on you. Mark's voice was sharp, laced with disappointment. With that, he turned on his heel, leaving her standing there, heart racing. The door slammed behind him, and a heavy silence enveloped the room. Sarah sank onto the couch, covering her face with her hands, feeling an undeniable mix of guilt and relief. Jake nudged against her, offering comfort that grounded her in the chaos. Oh, Jake, she whispered, blinking back the heat of tears. What have I done? As the afternoon seeped into twilight, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Mark. I didn't mean it. I just want to help you. The pang of guilt intensified, but she didn't know how to respond. Mark had pushed too hard, but maybe in doing so, he had struck a chord of truth. That night was restless. Shadows crept along the walls as she sat, with Jake curled at her feet. The quiet around them felt suffocating, amplifying the tumult within her heart. She should reach out to Mark. She wanted to explain why her walls had gone up, but stubbornness kept her glued to the spot, paralyzed by uncertainty. Just as she thought she might finally drift to sleep, Jake jumped to his feet, barking urgently at the door. Her heart raced as she followed his lead. What is it, boy? She called. Cautiously, she opened the door, bracing herself for what lay beyond. To her surprise, Mark stood there, drenched and breathless, as though he had just run a marathon. Hey, he said, his voice softer, colored with an obvious vulnerability. Mark. What are you? She began, but the words caught in her throat as she noticed the water dripping from his clothes. You're soaked. Yeah, I wanted to talk. I didn't mean what I said, he admitted, his tone sincere. I'm just worried about you, Sarah. I care. She felt a rush of warmth that quickly evaporated under confusion. You don't have to worry, Mark. I'm fine. She deflected. But his expression revealed he didn't believe her. It doesn't seem like it, he replied. You're shutting everyone out, even Jake. He misses when you're not happy. Stop, she said firmly. You can't tell me how I feel. Maybe I can if you keep refusing to talk about it. His frustration bubbled over again, but beneath it lay a current of underlying concern that tugged at her heart. I'm just trying to reach you. Can't you see that? You can't just ignore everyone because you're afraid. She sensed his vulnerability beneath the weight of his words, but she was locked in a struggle for control of her own emotions. Jake stood between them, looking confused by the escalating tension. This isn't just about me or you. It's about us, he insisted. You used to be so spontaneous. What happened? I grew up, Mark. Life isn't a never-ending adventure. It's messy and I have responsibilities, she shot back, feeling the exchange escalate again. What it is to you is not how it is for everyone else, he challenged, taking a step closer. It's painful to see you holding yourself back from everything that could bring you joy. A heavy silence descended, thick with the unspoken truth lying between them like an undisputed wall. You don't understand, she responded, although her voice wavered. It's not that simple. Then, help me understand, he urged, his sincerity forging a reluctant bridge between them. I'm scared, all right? Sarah admitted, the tremor in her voice betraying her facade. I went through a lot and I don't want to lose what I have. This is my safe space with Jake. For a moment, the vulnerability shifted the dynamic and they both stood there, suspended in the tension of honesty. But you're not alone, Sarah. You don't have to face everything yourself. I want to be here for you, but you have to let me in. he said softly, genuine concern etched across his face as she looked into his eyes. She saw a glimmer of understanding and invitation to break down the barriers she had erected. But fear quailed within her, whispering that letting someone in could lead to deeper wounds. "It's not that easy," she responded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe it's time for it to be." Jake, surprisingly, took a step forward, his tail wagging gently even amidst the tension, as if trying to bridge the gap between his mom and her stubborn cousin. Sarah's heart thumped heavily in her chest. This wasn't just Mark anymore. It was two puzzle pieces, struggling to find a way to fit together in a new picture she didn't yet know how to see. But the schism was still vast, and uncertainty clouded her senses. "Just give me a moment," she finally whispered, retreating. From the door, Mark nodded, but the lingering disappointment was palpable in the air as he turned to leave. "I'll be around," he promised, and as he walked away, the silence within the walls felt deafening. Sarah sank onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. Jake dutifully nudged against her, offering comfort that grounded her in the storm of emotions. This battle for control, for space, for understanding was hard-fought, yet she felt emboldened by a flicker of hope. As the darkness enveloped her, she knew she couldn't keep hiding. This was only the beginning, a turbulent chapter in a story that desperately needed resolution. Together, she and Mark would need to navigate through these waters, chaotic yet promising, filled with uncertainty but requiring the strength of vulnerability to survive the coming storms. And with Jake by her side, she felt ready to face what lay ahead. Crossroads of conflict, the days that followed Mark's damp and vulnerable visit unfolded like the slow burn of a fragile flame. Each morning, Sarah awoke with a mix of trepidation and determination, feeling the battle between her heart and mind becoming increasingly complex. The silence that hung in the air felt both oppressive and liberating, in uncharted territory that required exploration. Mark had slowed his relentless barrage of invitations, seemingly respecting her need for space. But though the absence of his energetic presence was a relief, it also left an unsettling void, reinforcing a growing uncertainty about their relationship. What was it that they truly wanted to achieve? And how could she finally let go of her walls? One crisp Saturday morning, Sarah decided to take Jake to the park, a place of comfort and familiarity. The goal was to recharge and refocus, basking in the tranquility granted by nature. The sun cast a golden sheen over everything, illuminating the vibrant colors of fall as leaves crunched beneath her feet. Jake bounded ahead, tongue lolling from his mouth in pure delight, reminding her of the lightness that came from simple joys. Sarah's anxiety began to ebb as she watched him wielding the kind of unfiltered joy that felt genuinely unattainable at times. As she settled on a bench, absorbing the serenity that enveloped her, she spotted a familiar figure approaching from the distance. It was Mark, a hesitant but familiar smile on his face, his hands straight into the pockets of his jacket. "Hey," he said, trying to keep his voice light. "I thought I might run into you here." "Hey," she replied, her heart racing. "How did he turn up here of all places?" I needed some fresh air." "Jake looks great," Mark remarked, bending down to ruffle Jake's fur. The dog responded with exuberance, tail wagging as if welcoming his long-lost companion. "Yeah, he's in his element," Sarah said, feeling a wave of mixed emotions surge through her. They stood in a fragile balance storm between wanting to connect and holding on to their differences. "I've been thinking," Mark began, pulling himself upright, his expression shifting to a more serious tone, "about our conversation the other night." She held her breath, dreading where this might lead. "And I realize I overstepped," he admitted, a hint of sincerity lacing his words. "I can't pretend to understand everything you're going through, but I want to try. You don't have to shoulder everything alone." Sarah felt a flutter of hope in her chest, but quickly quelled it with doubt. "It's complicated, Mark. I just ... I don't know how to let people in without feeling vulnerable." "I get that. But vulnerability isn't a weakness, it shows strength." His earnestness struck a chord within her, and she found herself wrestling with the idea. The moments ticked by, infused with a fragile tension between them. "Let's try this, just for today," he suggested, breaking the stillness. "No pressures. Just Jake, us, and maybe a walk around the park. Can we do that?" She hesitated, the ghosts of anxiety rising. But the light in his eyes reminded Her of the bond they used to share a simpler time when laughter flooded their days. Okay, she relented, her voice barely above a whisper. Let's do it. Together they walked side by side, Jake leading the way with enthusiasm. As they meandered along the winding paths, mythology of shared memories slowly unfolded. Mark talked about his job, how the work hadn't changed much, but he felt lighter now, as if his burden had lifted just by stepping into the light of honesty. You know, I've always admired how you handle things, Mark said, his gaze fixed ahead. You have this strength that doesn't need to shout to be heard. It just exists. Her heart softened at his words, the barriers slowly dissolving. In the gentle warmth of connection. Thank you, she replied, meeting his gaze, genuinely moved. Then let me help you too, he continued. Why don't we take Jake to that festival? Not to shove it in your face, but to show you that it can be fun. You'll be surprised at how free you can feel. The invitation was genuine and she could sense it. Yet the idea of returning to a crowd felt suffocating. I don't know, Mark, it's still overwhelming to think about it. Maybe just give yourself a chance, he offered, his arm brushing lightly against hers, an innocent gesture that sparked something familiar. Just one adventure at a time. As they continued walking, Sarah felt an old familiarity pulling her closer, inching away the walls she had built. The laughter of children playing nearby rang in her ears, and she suddenly felt the tug of freedom. Perhaps stepping outside her boundaries wouldn't lead to chaos just then. A sudden rustling nearby caught Jake's attention, and he darted off, chasing after something unseen. Jake, she called, her voice laced with concern. Don't worry. He'll be right back, Mark assured her. But her heart raced with the sudden adrenaline of worry. Moments later, Jake returned, tail wagging wildly but with something small and furry hanging from his mouth. What did you find, buddy? She asked, her tone lightening as they approached him. As they got closer, Sarah realized it was a small shaken rabbit. Jake dropped it as they neared, his instinct to play overriding any sense of care. No, Jake, leave it, she shouted. Heart pounding, the rabbit froze, eyes wide with fear, and watched the trio petrified and vulnerable. For a brief moment, a thrilling tension hung in the air. Mark quickly stepped forward, his voice turning soothing. Hey buddy, you're okay. Go on, hop away. As if on cue, the rabbit realized its chance for escape. It bolted into the underbrush, disappearing from sight. Sarah exhaled a shaky breath, a thrill coursing through her. That was close. See? Just like life, sometimes you have to let go of what's comfortable to find freedom. Mark's gaze held hers, and for a heartbeat, it felt like the world had narrowed down to just the two of them. A pulsating connection hanging in the balance. The silence between them was charged, an invitation to dive deeper into topics long avoided. You're right, she acknowledged, feeling the gravity of his words settle in her chest. I need to start letting go. I've always lived in a rigid bubble. Then let's pop it together, he smiled, that infectious charm reigniting. She felt a warm blush spread across her cheeks, her heart dancing at the thought. Could it really be that simple? Just then, the wind picked up, sending a sudden chill through the air. Mark shivered, pulling his collar closer as clouds crept across the sky. Looks like we should get moving soon, he suggested. Can't have it raining on our little adventure, right? As they walked, the discussions between them flowed more easily, filled with light touches of laughter and reminiscence. Yet, in the back of her mind, doubts flickered like shadows, begging her to tread carefully. The energy shifted rapidly, the light of the day giving way to overcast skies, threatening to pour. And as they approached the exit, her heart leaped when Mark turned serious again. I really want you to consider the festival, he said earnestly. You'll see it's not scary. Just think about Jake's happiness, and before he could finish, the sky erupted. Rain poured down heavy and sudden, drenching them both in an instant. Oh no! Sarah screamed, laughter breaking through. Her panic gasped as they both ran for shelter. They huddled beneath an awning as raindrops slammed against the ground. Mark's face was illuminated by the vivid colors of his laughter, and it tore down the barrier she unknowingly barricaded herself behind. Guess we'll be stuck here for a while, he jested, shaking his head gleefully. The playful tension shifted as they both focused on each other instead of anxieties. And then, just like that, the atmosphere crackled, transforming into something electric. Mark's eyes met hers, seriousness mingling with mischief. Maybe we could. A deafening clap of thunder interrupted their moment, and Sarah instinctively jumped, knocking into Mark as he instinctively caught her. "It's all right," he whispered, his voice calming. "We're safe." But as she stood there in the pouring rain, feeling the warmth of his grip, visions of what could be began to bloom. She was torn between clinging to her fears or stepping into the unknown alongside him. Before she could decide, the arrival of a cacophony of barking drew her attention. From behind a tree, a pack of dogs appeared, some joyful and wild from being caught in the downpour, others looking equally as bewildered. Jake, sensing camaraderie, bolted toward them, his body shimmering with excitement. "Jake, come back!" She yelled, but he was off, sprinting to join what could only be described as an impromptu canine party. Mark let out a laugh, eyes sparkling. "Looks like he's found his own adventure." As the pack began to romp around, splashing and creating a whirlpool of mud, Sarah felt a swell of exhilaration. There was a profound energy in the chaos swirling before her. Life was unfolding in playful, unexpected ways, and she wanted to capture it, to embrace it. All right, maybe one tiny adventure wouldn't hurt, she mused aloud, glancing sideways at Mark, who was watching her with anticipation. With a newfound determination, she pulled away from the shelter and rushed toward the fray, reveling in the downpour that soaked her clothes. "Let's go," she shouted, reveling in the wild. Abandoned. Mark followed suit, and soon they were all tumbling into the mud, laughter filling the empty spaces of uncertainty. It was Chow's raw and unfiltered. In that moment, the world blurred around her, both exhilarating and frantic. They raced back and forth, chasing joy in every splash, momentarily shedding the weight of obligations, fears, and expectations. And as they wiped away the thick tendrils of rain, Sarah felt the barriers crumbling beneath the weight of uninhibited laughter. This was life, but just as they were enveloped in a whirlwind of happiness, the sound of distant sirens pierced through the air, followed by the alarming splash of doubt returning to the surface. She glanced around and saw people turning toward the path leading to the park's exit, gathering their belongings as though a warning loomed. "Maybe we should head back," Mark suggested, concern slipping into his voice. Just as she nodded, a piercing scream cut through the air. Sarah's heart stopped. A woman panting and frantic was running past them, her eyes wide with panic. "My dog! Someone help! My dog is missing!" Without a second thought, something inside Sarah surged into action. She felt the primal urge to help, to be there in the face of chaos, a tight knot forming in her stomach. "Mark, we have to go," she urged, adrenaline rushing through her veins as the sensation of urgency enveloped her. "Wait!" Mark shouted, but she was already sprinting toward the direction the woman had come from. "Where did you last see him?" Sarah yelled, breathless, as the dog owner rushed to keep pace. "Near the entrance. He ran when I wasn't looking." The woman cried. "Jake." Sarah's voice broke through the pouring rain. "Stay close." The golden retriever bounded ahead, sensing the frantic energy in the air, leading the charge as they stormed toward the entrance. The realization hit. Hearth Festival was devoid of order. Amidst the chaos of barking dogs and people fleeing from the rain, confusion set in. The lost dog was somewhere among the sea of noise. A palpable energy crackled in the air as the anxious dog owner gave frantic directions while Sarah and Mark moved through the crowd. "This way!" the woman yelled, rushing toward a small dog tangled in the thick brush near an old oak tree. But as they pushed through the growing throng, it became clear the quest for the lost dog had morphed into a defining momentous test of the very boundary she had fought so hard to protect. Could she embrace disruption? Could she work together with Mark, a partner, not just in the live throughout the uncertainty? As Jake dashed around, barking excitedly, something in the air shifted. Sarah felt the connection pulsate as Mark caught her, unspoken understanding passing between them. No longer were they fighting. They were in this together. With courage blossoming within her, Sarah called on all of her own instincts. "Jake, find him!" she shouted, knowing that if anyone could help in this mess, it would be her devoted companion. Jake sprang into action, darting through the thrumming mass of frantic voices and scattered bodies, leading the charge with devoted determination. The sound of frantic barking echoed, a siren call pulling them deeper into the chaos, and as they all moved, hearts racing and blood pumping, Sarah realized that perhaps vulnerability wasn't so terrifying, yet was the heart of connection, the beginnings of a partnership that would redefine her understanding of adventure and belonging. As thunder rumbled in the distance, she pushed forward, knowing that amidst the unpredictable tide of life, she had allies on this journey: Jake, Mark, and even the anxious dog owner, all bound together in their quest for a joyful reunion. In that moment, she knew this wasn't just a test of resolve or boundaries. It was an opportunity, a moment of awakening, and she was ready to dive into the storm. And as Jake's triumphant bark filled the air, the world around her felt boundless. Promise of uncharted adventures pulling at her heart. And so, they ran into the chaos, ready to reclaim hope and joy as the clouds swirled ominously above, the vivid light on the horizon waiting to break through the storm. The journey was just beginning, and for the first time in a long while, Sarah felt exhilarated to embrace it all.